Hello, I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and I want to thank all of our keynote speakers, expert moderators, panelists, and solutions sponsors for participating in this year's Insight Jam Live. This has been a big year with the launch of the InsightJam.com community site and the amazing growth of the Insight Jam YouTube channel, which now has over 500,000 subscribers. Much of this success is tied directly to the video events, podcasts, and panel discussions we have been producing, and none of that would be possible without the thoughtful participation of the many IT professionals who are generously sharing their expert insights for this latest jam. We are building Insight Jam to be a place to celebrate enterprise technology with best practices, expert analysis, and solution showcases. And we want all of you to join us there to keep the jam going into the new year and beyond. If you haven't joined Insight Jam, please do. And if you already have, take a moment to invite some of your colleagues. And again, thank you all for being here and enjoy this event.
Solutions Review presents Insight Jam, a social media community for enterprise technology. Hello and welcome back to the 6th annual Insight Jam Strategies for AI Impact 4 Days of Thought Leadership. My name is Jonathan Paula. It's my pleasure to bring to you our next and final panel of the day today, which is future-proofing backup and storage systems for AI data protection. A wordy title, but a very dense one we're going to get into over the next hour with these 6 gentlemen from around the globe. David, Chris, Jamal, Eric, Rick, and Demetrius, thank you very much for joining me. It is a pleasure to have you here. I'm looking forward to this discussion. But let's begin before the discussion with some introductions. David, you're going to moderate, so let's have you kick us off. 30 seconds or less. Tell the audience a bit about yourself.
Thanks, Jonathan, and thanks for inviting me to moderate today. My name is David Loshin. I'm the president of Knowledge Integrity. I'm also an associate research engineer at University of Maryland. I have focused probably the last 35 years of my career on data governance, data management, data security, data privacy. And what's fascinating is in this world of increasing focus on artificial intelligence to realize that the core underlying driver for making that successful is the data. And so we need to figure out what are the best ways to make that data work for these different kinds of systems, and data protection is number one on the list.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Chris, let's go over to you next.
Hi, my name is Chris Marshall. I'm the CEO of Verified Backups, a company I've been running for 4 years. And, my part in the whole cyber picture is like there's lots of people who want to guard the perimeter and make sure the doors are locked and so on and so forth, if you take cyber as an analogy. But some of the bad guys are going to get in. And my job is to make sure that backups are good and tested and ready for use when that happens, because it's really when, not if.
Absolutely. Demetrius, welcome back. Great to see you again. I think on your 5th year in a row panelisting on our Insight Jam programming.
Absolutely. So I am Demetrius Malbrough, and currently I am with Microsoft, a senior product manager for the Azure storage, supporting business continuity and disaster recovery partners. I also host the Data Protection Gumbo podcast, and I have been in the data protection industry for 20 plus years. So I'm a little old here, but I don't feel like it. So thanks for having me again.
You're always welcome back. Same to you, Eric. I think it's your 5th year as well.
Great. Well, thank you, we always enjoy being with Solutions Review and Insight Jam. My name is Eric Herzog. I'm the CMO of Infinidat, a high-end enterprise storage company. I've done nothing but storage for 40 years. Yes, I'm almost 70. And whether that be hard drives, flash, storage chips, storage software, storage solutions, anything in that realm, I've done it in the enterprise world, in the channel world, and of course, also as a provider to other OEMs. And it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you again for including Infinidat.
Absolutely. Jamal, over to you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Jamal Ahmed. I'm a multi-award-winning global AI governance and data privacy expert based here in London. I'm a media commentator, international best-selling author, and my vision is to create a world where every woman, every man, and every child enjoy freedom over their personal information. And that's why I'm on a mission to build a community of world-class professionals where we make that happen together.
Love that goal. That's awesome. And Rick, last but not least.
Hey, thanks everyone. Hey, I'm Rick Vanover, the Rickatron, live with you here. You wouldn't guess it, but I work at Veeam, one of the largest providers of backup recovery solutions in the world. Real simple. I'm in the business of preventing bad things from happening to good data. That's one of the things I love about this panel and this topic, based in Central Ohio. First time on the show, and really happy to jump into it.
Absolutely. Happy to have you here. Happy to have you all here. But since I'm not qualified to lead the discussion, I'll hand things over to David now and let you six get at it. Good luck, and I will be back at the end of the show to wrap things up.
Thank you, Jonathan. And I'm going to give a little bit of a context to our conversation today. One of the things that I do as part of my jobs is to look at information risk and where are the potential vulnerabilities and what are the types of impacts that bad people or bad players can have within the organization. And with the increased focus on integrating AI into the environment, we see that there are some organizations that are potentially leaping to implement something without taking the level of control that they need to institute within the organization to ensure that bad things don't happen. Some of those bad things have to do with the way that they are running things themselves. And part of that is the degree of scalability. So let's start out with a question about scalability. What are the most significant challenges in scaling backup and storage systems to accommodate these AI workloads? And what are the different ways that organizations can address them? And I'm going to go backwards through our set of introductions that are going to Rick, because you were the last person to speak, so you get the first person to answer this question.
Oh, well, cheers, David. So I'd say the biggest challenge when it comes to scalability, I talk to a lot of organizations that simply don't know what they have. And so that is like this fundamental problem where everything from AI opportunities to just keeping the lights on, managing the data becomes a real challenge. So I have to talk to a lot of organizations about just knowing what they have. And then from a scalability, chances are, I mean, we've all heard the phrase ROT, redundant, obsolete, or trivial data. There's an incredible opportunity for housekeeping and things like that. So I feel that if you want to get to that resiliency level that organizations expect nowadays, I think that really just assessing what we have, what we want to protect, what we want to make available, and then who's actually using it, what's the business value. It's working backwards in the supply chain of data, honestly. I think, just getting the organizations getting their hands around what they have is a really important first step.
Thanks. Well, Jamal, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, for me, the challenge isn't just about adding more space, but actually scaling intelligently. AI workloads require lots of real-time processing, which takes up immense bandwidth, and we need dynamic storage capabilities. And traditional linear scaling just can't keep up. So we can adopt AI-powered data tiering using machine learning models to automatically classify data as either hot, warm, or cold, optimizing those storage resources. For example, critical data sets stay on high-speed SSDs, while the older, less critical data moves to more cost-efficient cloud storage. We can combine on-premise systems with scalable cloud options, creating a balance between speed and cost efficiency, and tools like AWS Outpost or Azure Arc to manage hybrid workloads seamlessly. And edge computing integration means that we can minimize that latency by processing AI workloads at the edge while using centralized storage for long-term backup. Two questions that I ask my clients is, what percentage of your AI data truly needs that real-time accessibility? And number two, how effectively can your current system prioritize data for those storage tiers?
So I'm gonna pivot from what you just said, because you were making reference to the opportunity for optimizing the way that your information is organized and managed, and going back to what Rick had said about getting rid of redundant and unused data. And I'm gonna let's pivot and turn over to Demetrius, because you work for the platform that both of these guys are kind of referring to in terms of cloud. I mean, if you're talking about you're the product manager for Azure Storage. Tell us a little bit about how what Jamal is referring to would be implemented from and supported by a cloud service provider like Azure.
Yeah, so I appreciate that question. So at the end of the day, it's all about when you are storing your data that you're choosing the proper redundancy structure for your data, and that you're also tiering your data appropriately and you have the proper redundancy built into it, because we all know that something is going to happen, right? Whether it's an outage or it's some type of disaster or even ransomware, right? So if you think about scalability, you have to make sure that you have the proper ground floor already laid as far as the way your storage is laid out, that it's redundant and that it's also stored appropriately across where you can recover from that storage. And so it's one of the main reasons why when you're thinking about scaling, that you also think about disaster recovery and high availability. And then you also add in the capability of being able to perform very high performance, because if you need to do a recovery, then you want to make sure that you're able to recover that data very quickly, and that data is protected with things like immutable storage, and also from a governance perspective as well, that you're able to get that data back appropriately, and you're storing that according to maybe some of the data sovereignty laws that are out there. So those are just a few things that you want to make sure that you have, that you're looking at scalability, you're also looking at redundancy, and you're also looking at performance as well, as far as when you're storing your data.
So that theme of performance has come up in each one of your answers, and I'm going to turn to Eric to solicit your thoughts. You guys provide high performance platform storage. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts about scalability and performance challenges.
So first of all, you need to realize that an AI workload is just another high-end enterprise workload. Many people focus on NVIDIA or on the server side or LLMs or SLMs, but it's still an application. It's a workload. It's a use case. It needs to be highly scalable, highly redundant, and it needs to be cyber safe. It's just like any other enterprise storage. It's ripe for a malware, a ransomware, or some other cyber type attack. And as you all know well, this year security analysts estimate that the impact of cyber attacks on enterprises is over $9.5 trillion US dollars. So this is a serious issue. So treating AI as something special, yes, how you deploy it and how you implement it is different from your ERP or your SAP workloads. Of course it is, but so is every other workload different from every other. But you still need high performance, you still need high availability. And in today's world, all applications, including AI, need that cybersecurity blanket, because the question is not if you'll be attacked, it's when and how often.
So clearly, the question of scalability is for storage is directly intertwined with the other key topic that you guys have all surfaced, which is protection and resilience, and being able to ensure that you can recover from some type of nefarious action that some bad actors has perpetrated. So Chris, let me turn to you and start a new thread about threats and ones that are specific to AI. So how do the security risks that are associated with AI differ from traditional data and traditional threats? And what are the types of measures that an organization could take to mitigate those?
That's two really great questions, and I appreciate you asking. You know, it's interesting because if we go back just 10 years, really every file on your network was similar. You had spreadsheets, you had blueprints, you had diagrams, you had whatever, but you had a type of data. Now you have all of those and all the metadata that go with them, but you now have AI, which is almost a living, breathing thing. And you know, the difference I see is AI becomes part of the workflow. It becomes part of how people come to work every morning and do their job. It reads the horizon, it scans different things like that. And so if you lose your AI, you really have a number of people that are shut out of work in a different way than would be the case if it was, you know, the loss of spreadsheets or the loss of sort of business intelligence data. So I think we're going to start to see ransom attacks specifically targeting AI systems just because they become so key to a company's workflow.
So Jamal, I want to go back to something that you had kind of referred to earlier about the types of cyber threats that could fold in, and just based on what Chris was saying. I think that there's certainly is the necessity for resilience from being able to recover from some kind of event, but there's all sorts of other threats. And I think what was interesting, what Chris said is if the AI is part of everybody's day-to-day job, that's one thing, and trying to target that is definitely I could see that as being a critical issue. But what about both targeting AI and leveraging AI for those threats, and how does that kind of factor into the types of risks that exist within the organization?
Yeah, great question. I mean, what's keeping me up at night at the moment is things like data poisoning, model theft, and these adversarial attacks, which means that what the risks demand is not just stronger security, but actually smarter adaptive systems. So how do you use AI in that? So we can bring in zero trust security models, have strict authentication and monitoring at every stage of the data pipeline. Then we can use identity-based access controls to make sure that only authorized AI models and users can interact with the sensitive data. We can also make use of synthetic data. So we can train the actual AI systems on the synthetic data rather than the real world sensitive data sets. This will reduce the exposure to actual data breaches while maintaining accuracy of our models. And we can also leverage AI to monitor for anomalies for real-time threat detection, such as unusual access to data patterns or input manipulation, which will automatically trigger alerts and countermeasures that help us beat the bad guys faster.
Demetrius, one of the things that some of the clients that I've worked with in the past have suggested that they are concerned about moving their workloads to the cloud because of security issues or their concerns about security. And what I've told them is the cloud service providers have been very diligent in attempting to address this in a very aggressive way to raise the level of assurance and trust in the platform. So can you talk a little bit about AI specific threats and what Azure has been doing to try to address these?
Well, just overall, and instead of really diving into exactly what's going on at Azure, just overall, I just want to talk a little bit about just some of the things that are happening just overall from a security perspective, and the cloud maybe not being as secure, but it is as secure as your on-prem location. So if you talk about the shared responsibility model, right? So that means that you have to play your part and protect your data, right? And so everything else is already protected. So if you look at your infrastructure that the cloud is actually a part of, that's protected. So your data is something that you are responsible for protecting. So it's all about making sure that both are working hand in hand, and that you are utilizing things like the zero trust, and you're implementing multi-factor authentication, and you're utilizing a zero trust architecture. So just making sure that you and your teams are all working together, because at the end of the day, whether it's protecting AI and you're talking lots of data, it's all about everyone working together as a team sport to make sure that, number one, things are automated, right? Making sure that you have everything configured properly in order to be able to recover in case something happens, because we all know that something will happen. And we continue to hear in the news almost on a daily basis that there's a breach, or there's some type of ransomware attack or geopolitical thing that's going on. So it's all about working together and making sure that everyone is playing their part in order to keep the perimeter secure and keep it safe.
So to talk about recovery, resilience, these are all the things that have bubbled up a little bit in each one of your responses. Rick, let me go to you. What do you guys think in terms of that level of capability, recovery, resilience, in terms of AI specific threats?
I love Eric's point. I hate to say, another high-end enterprise app. That's a good starting point, but I would add a couple of different sprinkles of Ricketron dust here. Number one, I think no organization should go too far away from a responsible AI strategy. A couple of things here include focusing on ethical AI. That becomes really important as an organization, is building on some models, whether they steal it or build it. Then secondly, I'd really recommend organizations never go too far from anything that's not explainable and being transparent with those models. I know there's some legislation here in the US around even having the ability to opt out of being handled by AI. I can't remember if that got passed, but it was part of the AI Bill of Rights. And then the last thing is around data privacy and minimal data use. Those are some really always in season types of things. So those are some kind of guidelines I would also offer up for that.
So you're walking an interesting or fine line or fine barrier between the physical concerns about data protection and the ethical protections around use of AI systems in a way that addresses questions like transparency and traceability and explainability and those types of things.
I don't think everybody thinks of both. That's the thing. That's why I brought them up.
Well, so I would love to be able to put a pin in that topic, and we'll cycle back on that a little bit later, because I certainly would love to hear everybody's opinion about that. Eric, let me turn to you. Let me fire up a new thread here. Modernization. A lot of the topics that have come up with a bunch of different clients that I've worked with over the last 5 years has been using the term modernization. And when they say modernization, I would say 90% of the time what they mean is migration, and just lifting and shifting their data footprint from an on-prem or a data center footprint to a cloud footprint, let alone a multi-cloud footprint. And I think that they miss an opportunity if they don't look at their actual application space and what the value proposition is for migrating or modernizing their application in the first place, especially in terms of leveraging newer technology. So in terms of modernization, what are some steps that an organization can take to modernize legacy backup and storage systems, as opposed to just moving it from one platform to another, so that you can meet those unique demands of these new AI-driven data environments?
Well, the thing is to make sure that you're profiling your applications, your workloads, and use cases. What do I need to replicate? How often do I need to replicate it? How often do you need to do snapshotting and analysis of those snapshots to check for malware or ransomware? Do you really need to have the asset database? Well, which assets? Financial assets? Heck yes. The physical assets, Demetrius works for Microsoft. They own all kinds of buildings. There is a database somewhere of every desk, every whiteboard, every building, every garbage can owned by Microsoft. Well, you know what? Does that really need to be a high priority for cyber or for backup? Probably not. But does the financial asset database of Microsoft, one of the 3 most valuable companies on the stock exchange? Heck yes. So you need to understand what your data types are. You need to understand how you can go about using them. And it's all about automation, reducing. Everybody has heard about the IT skills gap. And particularly in backup and storage, it can be very intensive. So if you can take applications and workloads and go from 15 storage admins for, let's say, 100 petabytes and go to 4, that has real advantages for you from a backup perspective, from a primary storage perspective, from a cyber perspective. And this is all built about modernization, particularly around how you automate everything. How do you have everything talk to everything? How does your storage talk to your SIM or source software or your SOC if you've got one from a cyber perspective? Many times that gets left out. Remember, CIOs, and I've been doing this a long time, Rick is, I've known for years, Rick will echo this. What CIO used to be a storage admin? Like 0. So they know they need storage, but boy, do they hate it. So it's really about optimizing the storage, the cyber around the storage, the data protection, both from the backup perspective, but also business continuity. We just had an earthquake in California last week, caused a tsunami, ended up being minor. But if what had that been a really big earthquake? Well, guess what? There's a lot of data sitting in California. You better have that backed up, and you better as heck have it replicated to Colorado or somewhere outside of California. So it's all about thinking what you're doing and automating as much as possible and making it function on a regular basis, right? You're going to have disasters. Well, guess what? Most of us know this on this panel. Many of our customers never even practice like there's a disaster. Well, guess what? That's a disaster. You really need to practice this. You don't think, anyone who has a relative who's in the fire department, they practice that. They don't just run around and fight fires, not only get trained, but even when they're a fireman for 30 years, they still train on new things. You have to do the same thing with your data. You have to automate it. You have to modernize it. And you have to make sure it's always protected from a short-term perspective with backup, archiving, and truly with real disasters. And I would argue a cyber attack is a type of disaster. So I would include that in the disaster area as well.
So I was thinking about who to turn to next, but you already gave me the prompt. So I'm going to go to Rick. Are you just going to reinforce what Eric just said, or do you actually have
well, I got data
something
points
to augment that?
All of us grew up preparing for fire, flood, and blood type of disasters. But ransomware, by the numbers, cyber incidents are the disaster we are most likely to deal with. But what I would say, I'm going to give a different spin. Earlier this year, Veeam acquired an incident response firm. And that's the gateway for all these AI and all these other things. It's just the platform you run on. And Bill Siegel, the CEO of Covert by Veeam, said at VeeamON, it's my favorite quote of the year. He says, I can tell in the first 5 minutes of a telephone call on an initial kickoff for incident response how poorly or how well an organization will proceed in that event just based on how well they present themselves, because organizations will fall to the level of their preparation. Eric's right. Fire department, pilots, all they do is practice the abnormal. You have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And we live in a world where the technology is there. In fact, most of the providers here, and I love the name, Verified Backups, right on time, man. So it's like we fall to the level of preparation, and that is honestly not always appealing, but trust me, the juice is worth the squeeze when you need it most.
So yet again, you guys have given me the right prompt. I'm going to go to Chris, and I want to kind of build on something that both Eric and Rick have referred to, but that Jamal referred to a little bit earlier in terms of leveraging AI to help in supporting the application space. And what do you see as the opportunities for using AI systems to help in not just doing modernization of a legacy system, but doing it in a way that can identify and potentially seal up a vulnerability associated with backup and storage?
I really like the approach because many companies are adopting AI to help them reach business goals or to help them serve customers or to do chatbots or whatever. But you have this incredibly powerful tool which can also be asked questions or prompts about your security, which can also be asked questions about your backups. And the same tool that has all of these business functions can itself generate content around the safety and security of your environment. And I think that that's something that more companies need to look at. They've brought the tool into the building. They need to use it fully.
So one of the themes that also has popped up, especially Eric, you mentioned it about 5 times, is automation. And I don't think anybody disagrees that we need to use automation, especially as the landscapes that we are dealing with are becoming more and more complex with multi-cloud distributions and hybrid environments, and the duration of it, expectation of working within that hybrid environment. And I've also heard of organizations that are looking at repatriating their data that they had moved to the cloud, bringing that back to an on-prem platform space because of their concerns. But in terms of automation, what is the role of automation? How can automation and intelligent technologies enhance efficiency, reliability of backup, resilience, storage systems for AI data? So Eric, you brought it up, so I'm going to go right back to you.
All right, so I'll give you a real world example. So we have a storage solution, not to do an ad, but we have a storage solution that exists in the cloud, such as in Microsoft, but also on-prem. That solution seamlessly integrates with SIM or SOAR, data center-wide cybersecurity software, or with a SOC. So what happens is whether it's a Veeam backup workload or a primary workload, whether it be in the cloud with Demetrius's company or on-prem, when those pieces of software or the SOC senses a cyber attack, the storage automatically kicks in and starts doing things. So that's just a real world example. No pick up the phone, no send a text, no send an email to the storage admins. Oh my God, you got to take a snapshot of you. Wait, are you scanning for ransomware and malware right now? You can automate all of that. So that's just a real world example combining the cyber threat side, the cloud side, the on-prem side, and the backup side, since we do a lot of work with Rick's company on a continual basis. But the point is, it can all be automated. The backup's automated to us. We create an immutable snapshot. We can also do that out in the cloud. So Rick Veeam can back up to actually our software sitting in the cloud on top of Microsoft. And then if any of the cyber software sees a cyber attack, both the data in the cloud and the data on-prem can automatically start doing things. That's the kind of thing you need. In this case, the example is cyber protection, but whether it be AI workloads, by the way, all the bad guys using AI too, right? This is not like the old mafioso movies, right? Hey, I'm going to break your leg. That's not what they do. These guys are geniuses, and they are just as smart as using AI for badness as we want to be for goodness. So the use of AI to automate everything on our side, and knowing that the bad actors are going to use AI to try to overthrow us every day. This is a leapfrog thing, right? Remember when you were a little kid, you did that whole leapfrog game? It's exactly what's happening. We're leapfrogging them, then they're going to leapfrog us. We better leapfrog them again. Otherwise, instead of 9.5 trillion, the cyber attacks are going to be 12 trillion. And that's not what any of our companies want. And none of our customers want to see any of that. The cost of cyber is incredibly expensive, but automation, that's just one example of how you automate between cloud, between backup, on-prem, and cyber, all in the example I just gave. And that's all kinds of other things we could be automating and modernizing.
So that's reminiscent of the world of fraud detection, fraud prevention, and the situation where no matter what you're doing to detect and prevent fraud, the only fraud that you're able to prevent and detect are the ones that you're familiar with, and not the ones that your enemies are perpetrating under your nose without you even knowing that it's there. So Demetrius, what are some suggestions, recommendations that people who are looking at expanding their footprint across different types of storage layers, what can they do to leverage automation to be able to anticipate intrusion awareness in scenarios that they don't know that they need to know?
Well, first off, I just want to say that manual systems can't meet the demands of AI today, and so the game has definitely changed. And so we're talking that the scale and the speed, and also the complexity of these modern workloads, they definitely require more than human intervention. So they demand automation. They're very hungry for automation, and that's the only way that you're going to be able to secure your systems is through either an AI-driven system or an automated system. And then you also talk about predictive analytics as well, because you need to detect failures. And I just recorded an episode as well around the new perimeter is the identity. So identity access management and securing the identity is one of the most critical aspects of protecting your environment, because you have phishing out there, and you have vishing, you have whaling, you have all these different methods and ways that bad actors use in order to gain access to your environment. That you need to make sure that you are also leveraging automation, and you also have artificial intelligence and machine learning as well. And then you talk about some emerging technologies like quantum computing and some of the risks with quantum computing breaking encryption algorithms as well. And so things are continually advancing, just from IoT. Of course, data is continuing to scale, and so we're going to need lots of ways in order to fully automate ways to keep all of the data protected, keep it automated, and keep it secure.
So Jamal, both Eric and Demetrius have made references to the need for automating across different layers of your landscape stack. I'm paraphrasing somewhat. But one of the things that I think organizations aren't prepared to deal with is that management itself becomes a complexity in the ability to really execute, and that's because especially if you look at identity as being the focal point. What are some suggestions for maybe automating the ability to govern and manage the complexity of the composition of automation that's going on across these distributed and spread out landscapes?
Yeah, so automation for me isn't just about saving the time, but also about enhancing the reliability and proactively preventing the issues. The future is predictive and it's about self-healing systems, so we take out the complexity from human intervention. So 3 things we can do. One is use AI-driven backup scheduling. We can use AI to predict peak usage times and schedule those backups during the low activity periods so there's no disruption. And then self-healing mechanisms. We can deploy tools that detect and fix system redundancies or the minor faults automatically without having to have a human intervene. And we can also have policy-driven automation. So we can automate based on compliance rules. Let's say, for example, automating an encryption of backups as soon as they're created. The kind of things that we need to think about is how does your backup system handle peak traffic periods? And are your automation tools actually capable of identifying and responding to anomalies in real time?
So, Chris, let's drill down into that a little bit with respect to some of the clients that you've seen. How are they looking at automation as a motivator and as a value proposition for efficiency and reliability?
Well, you have to automate because computers are a lot more consistent than we are. I ran into a client that had a purse backup. Literally every day she took a hard drive out of her purse and plugged it into the server and took the one on the server and put it in her purse and went home. It's the CEO of the company. The problem was she would forget, or she'd go out of town or whatever. People forget our workloads are our work capacity is much less than the computers that we use, and things can be scheduled out. Fail safes can be put in place. The list of automations is really unlimited, and why not have the computer do those things so that we can free our brains for the stuff that we are really good at?
So I hear what you're saying. I'm still kind of focusing back on dovetailing what Demetrius said with what Eric was referring to and what Jamal was also kind of referring to. Rick, I'm going to go to you. It seems like there's a lot of overhead associated with managing not the technical piece of that automation, but in the context of identity, because people are not static, people are constantly moving around, people are constantly changing roles, changing responsibilities and accountability. How do you accommodate the human side of the introduction of automation into a reliability strategy?
The human side is important. I think this is an investment that organizations need to make. And one of the examples I want to give you, the audience as well, a very practical way that it can be super relevant. I debriefed of an organization going through massive ransomware situation, potential end of days for their business. Thank goodness they had their backup data in Azure, did absolute recovery. But you know what was really the challenge is they had to re-image everything, and they were not infrastructure as code experts. They didn't trust anything. They re-firmwared everything and then went bare metal. Greenfield is actually kind of hard to do. So I want to give an example of, back to my level of preparation, I'd say infrastructure as code is a very good relevant example from a potential different type of disaster. A lot of times organizations have their data, but they don't know where or how to recover. So having an infrastructure as code competency is a very important element from a staff credential standpoint. So that's one quick example I would share, but I feel that organizations need to pick like a few areas of automation and invest accordingly.
We've all been kind of dancing around this one topic, which is compliance and governance, or maybe governance and compliance rather. A lot of what you guys have all raised are different aspects of a governance strategy, and some of that governance strategy is purely for management purposes, just to make sure that you know what you're doing. But there's increasing pressure, and Eric, I think you also referred to this earlier. There's increasing legislative pressure from within the United States, within the European Union, mandates, directives about AI and ethical use or level of trust, and opt in, opt out. There's all sorts of different facets of this. Maybe even building off of the data protection legislation and regulations like GDPR and the California different versions of the California Consumer Privacy Act. What are some data or best practices for ensuring that backup and storage systems for AI data remain compliant with this evolving regulatory environment and governance requirements? Jamal, I'm going to go to you first on that one.
Yeah, so look, AI does come with all of these complex compliance demands. Not only do we have to think about the privacy ones like the GDPR, the PDPL, the CCPA, but we also have to think about the EU AI Act, and we need to make sure that we practice proactive governance to avoid these hefty fines. 3 things that we can do. We can think about machine readable policies. So we can actually implement systems where compliance rules are machine readable, which means that we can have automated checks for things like cross-border data transfers or any sensitive data that we might be processing. We can create privacy by design principles by embedding governance controls at every stage of the data lifecycle, and we design the systems to flag and act on any non-compliant behavior. And we can also bring in audit-ready explainability tools. Use AI explainability tools to make sure your data models and processes are transparent and easy to demonstrate during audits. So the things I like to think about is how often are your data governance policies updated to reflect the new regulations? I just mentioned PDPL, which came into force just a few months ago. And can you backup, or can your backup system automatically encrypt or anonymize that data to meet those regulatory requirements?
So that raises a couple of interesting points, and I'm going to drill down on one of them specifically, which was personal information, which is a subset of the world of sensitive information, but the ability to identify where there is personal information in your stored data repositories is much more complicated than just running a query and on a structured database and looking for all the instances where say Rick or Demetrius's name comes up. It's really complicated. There's lots of embedding of personal information in documents, emails, those types of things. And I'd like to gauge your solicit your feedback on the ways that we can both protect against AI powered attacks, as well as how can we make use of AI to support compliance and governance. So Rick, I'm going to go to you on that one.
So I really like what Jamal said, David. And one thing I'll add is that I've been in this business a long time, not as long as Eric, but what I will say is that, no product or solution is 100% compliant. It is completely predicated on how it is implemented, how it is audited, period. I used to work in a bank. That's how I got through, by knowing that. But one thing I will say, when it comes to the AI spin, I think we have to live off the land and basically do our own red team drill. We built it. We need to go try to tear it apart. We need to understand where are the holes in the crack in the solution. Because you know what? The threat actors are going to find it. And that is more important than compliance, right? So I would just kind of give those life lessons like that, because I feel it gets really specific, really quick, but that mindset will really transcend nearly any scenario.
And I also just wanted to add in one simple thing that the audience can do, and that's tagging and also classifying your data and setting that up on an automated policy, right? So when your data, hits your production system, and you're ready to protect that data and you're ready to start backing it up, setting up some tagging and some policy creation in order to classify that data appropriately is something super simple and easy that you can utilize automation and AI to do automatically for you, so you won't have to worry about it. And then you can use lifecycle management to start storing that data in the proper storage accounts, and then start aging and expiring that data out appropriately, so you can also start to save cost as well. So that's just one super simple thing that the audience can do. If you're not doing that today, I definitely recommend that you start tagging and classifying your data just from a data privacy perspective.
So I'm glad that you jumped in there, because I was going to go to you anyway, and to ask specifically about this type of thing, which is in a more general sense, which is not about the specifics of tagging and classifying, but rather how can we make use of tagging and classifying for automating policy compliance, and how do we use that to define policies in a way that allow that to be manageable and governed from an enterprise perspective. So I think what you started to say is going to tie a lot of what you guys were saying together, because it's going to focus on both automation, on governance, on compliance, and the ability to take advantage of that in terms of a policy perspective. So I'm going to go back to you, Demetrius. How do your clients use that capability of tagging to deploy data policies?
And so as I mentioned earlier, it's pretty much a team sport. So no one product is going to deem you automatically compliant, right? So if you utilize a multitude of solutions, then if you look at those solutions, they're all going to have out of the box preset compliance knobs that you can turn, right? So if you want to comply with CCPA or GDPR, or the new thing now in the EU is DORA, Digital Operational Resilience Act. So that's going into effect on January the 17th of 2025. So financial services institutions, they're all gearing up right now to comply with DORA. And I'm not talking Dora the Explorer, but it is really about financial services organizations and companies that are in that ecosystem are applying or complying with these different articles that will make sure that your infrastructure and your incident management and your monitoring and your reporting is all set up to properly provide the information that's necessary when the auditors come knocking on your door. So of course you want to make sure AI and artificial intelligence and policy management and creation of all those different policies are set up in order to do that. But you have to utilize a comprehensive view of making sure that you're also leveraging things like your SIM and your SOAR, your XDR, and all of your other cybersecurity platforms in order to make sure that they are also in line with what you're using to back up that data and recover your data, just in case you need to recover your data if there's some type of mishap or ransomware type attack.
So you guys have covered a large part of the different facets of future-proofing backup and storage systems. Let's give everybody a little bit of time just to give some final thoughts. So let's go alphabetically by first name. Let's start with Chris. Chris, I think you're muted.
I am muted. Sorry about that. I'm going to throw a little bit of a wrench in, because Jamal, you mentioned what keeps you up at night. What keeps me up is things like GDPR. It's things like having a client call me and say they want their data taken out of my system, but what if their data is part of the way I trained my AI? And to take it another step, what if their data is part of the answer set that my AI has been providing people? So these are things that are even a little bit beyond storage, but it's all things that we're going to have to grapple with. And now is as good a time as ever. Thank you.
Demetrius, final thoughts?
Yeah, so just final thoughts for me. Let me leave everyone with this. So the future of AI data protection is very active, and it's intentional, and it's something that you should be bold on. So first, scalability is non-negotiable. And you also have to build systems that don't just survive growth, but actually thrive on it. And second, security is definitely paramount. So protect your AI data as if it's your most valuable asset, because actually it is. And third, modernize your legacy systems. We talked a lot about that earlier on. And transformation isn't easy, but it's definitely necessary. Fourth, you want to make sure that you embrace automation and let your intelligence systems carry the load while your teams are out there innovating. And then finally, you want to prioritize compliance and governance, because building trust by aligning all of your systems with principles that guide us is very key and is very paramount. So it's not just about technology, it's about building a foundation for the future. And the future is bright if we all think about making sure that we are protecting our data with all the different types of mechanisms that are out there, like AI and automation.
Thank you. If my knowledge of the alphabet is correct, I think, Eric, you're going to be next.
Well, I think we brought up a number of great points. I think one of the key things is, having done this for so long, storage, whether it be primary storage, backup storage, disaster recovery, archiving, is often overlooked by the CIO. So it's really important for the listeners to realize that they need to make sure the data sits on the storage. The data is backed up by the backup software. The data is sitting in the cloud. And so if the CIO is focused on SAP and Oracle and LLMs and what SLM, and doesn't realize that all the stuff that those applications use is data, primary storage, secondary storage, backup storage, archive storage, they need to realize that storage needs a seat at the table at the CIO level, and often it's not. And we've talked about this a lot. And then obviously, when you get to some of the things around AI, you've got to make sure that the data, you're tying off with the legal guys. Okay, there are a lot of legal issues about AI usage. And several companies have even banned it because it's very easy, especially if you're using public AI, to steal IP, violate registered trademarks, violate patents. So it's really important that anything the storage guys do, the backup guys do, the data management team does, which in my world will be outside of the storage purview, is tied off with what are the legal requirements and what are we doing to make sure we protect our own data and don't inadvertently steal someone else's data. And I think those are the critical issues that we've brought up throughout today's discussion.
Thank you. Jamal, I think you're next for your 60-second final comments.
Thank you. Well, I think if we want to really future-proof backup and storage systems for AI data, we need to have a mindset shift, and the focus needs to shift from just capacity to actual intelligent scalability, adaptive security, and automated governance. That means we need to embrace things like hybrid architectures, AI-powered threat detection, and bring in more privacy by design principles to keep us ahead. The goal isn't just to keep up with AI demands, but we want to lead with proactive, resilient, and compliant solutions. It's not just about solving today's challenges, but preparing for the opportunities of tomorrow.
Thank you. And I think last, it's the Rickatron.
The Rickatron.
Did I get that right?
You got it. That's the name. Keeping data safe is the game. So my closing thoughts are really simple. Talk to your teams. I wanted to give a very different point of advice here. I don't know where everybody is, when works groups are structured. I go into the Veeam office every day. Trust me, I would never do this to my home. Okay. But the thought here is just talking to your teams will very much bridge gaps and avoid surprises. I want to give a very practical piece of advice there. What is important to the sales team? What is important to accounting, legal, HR, finance? That has impacts to compliance, all these other things. And here's the pro tip. You get that alignment from the business perspective, then getting the money to make a change is a lot easier, right? And that'll prepare you for AI. That'll better prepare you for some of the cyber threats, heck, even fire, flood, and blood, and more. So just talk to your teams, be connected with the business, and you can really up that resiliency game to the expectation that the business has.
Thanks. Well, this has been a very informative conversation. I'm glad all of you guys were able to join us today. I'm going to hand it back to Jonathan.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that and appreciate the discussion over the last hour. It's been a pleasure listening in. I know you guys are veterans at what you do, and it's always great to get your expertise on things. Before we go, however, I would love to invite each of you some self-promotion. If you want to plug your podcast, a book, company solution, whatever it is, we'll go in counterclockwise order and start with Rick.
Just let everybody know, veeam.com, all good things start there. And little something is community.veeam.com. We run a really awesome Veeam community. So check out community.veeam.com.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And thank you for keeping it short. Jamal, 30 seconds or so. Where'd you like to send people?
Hi, I'm Jamal, global data privacy leader in data protection and AI governance, known by the BBC as the king of data protection. And I specialize in helping businesses future-proof their systems to navigate the complex intersection of compliance and privacy. I'm the best-selling author of the Easy Peasy Guide to the GDPR and also founder of the Privacy Pros Academy. I've trained over 30,000 professionals around the world to master privacy challenges with clarity and confidence. And I invite you to join me in my mission to make data privacy practical, actionable, and accessible for everyone. Because the future of data protection starts with informed, empowered individuals and organizations. And I want to build that future together with you. Tune into my podcast, Privacy Pros, top 2.5% out of 3.5 million podcasts. See you there.
Thank you. Not too bad. Eric, where would you like to send the audience?
www.infinidat.com. We're a high-end enterprise storage company. 28% of the Fortune 50 leverage our technology. We partner very heavily with both Demetrius's company and with Rick's. So we provide a comprehensive enterprise solution, very high-end and imbued cybersecurity from stem to stern. So thanks again for including us. We always appreciate Insight Jam and Solutions Review. Thank you.
Absolutely. Right back to you. Really appreciate you guys coming on year after year. Demetrius, last words, last promo.
Yes, thanks for having me on again. And if you're not already using Azure Storage, please do so. And I am also the host of the Data Protection Gumbo podcast. So please check out that. We are on YouTube as well. And we are rolling out a new newsletter called Gumbo Briefs in a few months as well. So be sure to go ahead and sign up for that. Also, this was definitely fun, and I look forward to maybe participating next year. So thanks for having me.
You've got it. I think you guys have a standing invite at this point. Chris, anything you'd like to promote?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go through SOC 2 or HIPAA, they require that you test your backups once a year. And at Verified Backups, we just don't believe that that's frequent enough. Too many things can happen. So we do full restore tests for all of our clients at an offsite location once a day so that they know for sure that last night's backup worked, that it will restore if they need it because it's already been restored and tested. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be on here. And this has been a great privilege.
You're very well. You guys are all very generous and gracious. I love it. David, final thoughts from you.
There is no better place for me to direct people than to the Insight Jam Information Risk podcast that I do with Doug. We talk about all sorts of issues associated with the vulnerabilities that organizations face when they don't properly understand the risks associated with the exploding world of information, data management, data strategy, etc. So the Insight Jam Information Risk podcast, wherever your favorite podcasts are sold, produced, and broadcast. And YouTube.
Thank you very much, David. Pleasure having you on, and always love the plug that comes right back here to Insight Jam. That's kind of the name of the game. That will do it for this panel and our first day of Insight Jam, 4 days of thought leadership. We're back at it tomorrow with another panel, so stay tuned for Jan Bond. His keynote, Late Binding Fixes ERP Systems, will kick off our coverage tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. But until then, we do encourage you to join the conversation over at insightjam.com for all your technology needs and research. And of course, join the 555,000 people that have already subscribed to our YouTube channel for panel highlights, weekly podcasts, expert advice, and a whole lot more. But for now, for this group, have a great night We hope to see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. For video highlights, replays, and more, visit InsightJam.com.